This is Josh Henkin and Jessica Bento. Jess is a physical therapist. She's the director of operations for Innovative Fitness Solutions as well as Ultimate Sandbag Training. She heads up the educational programs for the Dynamic Variable Resistance Training programs. And she's a speaker for Perform Better. She travels internationally as a presenter and she has over 20 years experience in the field. Josh is a strength coach. He's the CEO of Ultimate Sandbag Training and the creator of the Ultimate Sandbag and the DVRT training systems. I'm very happy to have them back here today. I will let them take over from here. Josh and Jess.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And wow, it sounds like you do way more than I do.
I know.
I know that's how it goes. Well, we're excited to do our first webinar with Perform Better for 2026. The past several years, we've really enjoyed being able to do these presentations. Being able to reach out to so many people is a great opportunity. And we wanted to hit a topic that I think is so relevant to so many people, including yours truly here, as we are both well over 40,
Wow.
which is how do you work with clients over 40? And what are the common mistakes that people make? So while a lot of people in the industry say that, they don't really change what they do. We want to really help people problem solve the common issues with this population.
All right, Aaron already gave us a great introduction. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about us, but I do want to let you know that we're combining my over 25 plus years of clinical experience and Josh's over 30 plus years of fitness and performance coaching, because he's much older, to give you all of these insights that we're going to be talking about today.
Just had to throw that in there, huh?
I did. All right, before we dive into the free webinar, I do want to let you know that this is going to lead into our next 6-week masterclass for those that have attended our masterclasses in the past. This is on longevity masterclass that's going to run 6 weeks starting March 10th. So that's coming up pretty quick. It will run 6 weeks in length every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time are the live sessions. By no means is it mandatory that you attend the live sessions. You will receive the recordings that never expire, regardless if you attend or not. Each session is about an hour with a 20-minute Q&A after. And then this particular course has been approved for 10 contact hours with NASM and AFA. And we're also providing some free resources that we've never done in the past on mindset training, menopause, and on balance. Now, why did we want to do this masterclass? Well, this is the fastest growing population, the 40 plus and up group, and even more so the 65 and up. And this is just not in the United States, but it's worldwide. And you can start seeing that graph. It's just going to exponentially grow as the years go on as well. So this means we're seeing a growing population of that over 40 group, and they just don't want to lose weight or gain muscle, because of course they do, but they want to focus on other things as well, improve energy, decrease chronic aches and pains or chronic diseases, and so forth. So the fitness professional is really going to have a large pool of individuals they can significantly impact. And this group of individuals also has the resources to do this type of consistent training as well. Now, with all this talk of exercise is great for you, the benefits, we're still not getting that messaging across. I'm sure you guys have seen the statistics. 24% of adults both meet aerobic and strength training guidelines. So even with all that talk of, you should exercise, you should eat right, we're still not getting that messaging across. Now, nobody talks about exercise, right? I always see this narrative floating around social media. I see people all the time, influencers saying, nobody talks about exercise. That's the problem. And that's not the case. Public health has been talking about different fitness programs for decades and pushing different fitness programs for decades. And maybe it's the way they're communicating that's not getting across. But social media does a really bad job of this as well, constantly lecturing people that they should exercise. So I'm going to have Josh play this really quickly.
Take out the mic for a second,
Yeah,
so everyone can
sorry.
hear this. So this is a short montage of social media because no one's talking about strength training or fitness, right?
On lifestyle medicine, and we're still in pillar 2, physical activity, and we're going to talk about resistance training today. Resistance training is one of the most underutilized tools in health, and yet it's absolutely critical for long-term function and quality of life. Strength training,
If you're over 30 and you're not strength training, you're choosing decline. And that may sound harsh, but it's honest.
I want to hone in on this because I'm seeing how hard it is and how difficult it is to lift weights. You've got demanding careers. Maybe you've got a spouse at home. Maybe you've got kids. I get it. Life is freaking hard. But let me tell you, there's no easy way out, and there's no easy way of saying this. You have to love strength.
Is not strength training. This is what's going to happen. Do you see all those women in their late age, 60s, 70s, and 80s, that need a lot of help? Do you see them having a very hard time going upstairs or getting off the floor.
So nobody's talking about exercise, right? No, we've even got Grover talking about exercise.
Oh, everybody, 6 foot over here. He'll tell you there are all types of ways you can exercise, like
So I think he's going to be on the tour this year, isn't he?
He is speaking.
Make sure the mics are still on so people can hear us. There we go.
We got it. So there is a lot of talk about exercise. Am I on?
Just the mic's going. There we go.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. But what we've learned from the research, and this has been researched, just telling people to exercise doesn't work. Just telling people to eat a healthier diet doesn't work. Being lectured to and just being told isn't the right way to go about it. There are many obstacles and behaviors that we have to address. We don't really do a good job of that, is finding out those barriers to why people aren't consistently training or consistently doing an exercise program. I spend an enormous amount of time in the clinic going over this with people. What are the obstacles? What are the barriers to doing consistent home programs or to increase your activity? This is the hardest thing, not just telling people to exercise. They already know that.
Yeah, so we really need to shift our messaging because, again, as Jessica mentioned, just telling people the benefits, actually research shows doesn't get people to exercise. And we want to demonstrate that. Dr. Ali Crum is an amazing Stanford professor and researcher in mind-body practices in psychological and behavioral sciences. And she, I think, explains it really well. So I'm going to turn it over to her to explain why not only does fitness need to change, but public health is changing the way they approach messaging as well. Got to take off the mic again.
All of our efforts to get more out of exercise. My current understanding of the literature is that getting somewhere between 150 and 180 minutes per week of cardiovascular exercise is probably a good idea for most people. If I tell myself that it's not just a good idea, but that it's extremely effective in lowering my blood pressure and maintaining healthy weight, et cetera, according to these results, it will have an enhanced effect on those metrics. Is that right?
This is a really important point because what this reveals is that we have to be more thoughtful in how we go about motivating people to exercise or teaching people about the benefits. Our current approach is just to basically tell people, here's what you need to get enough exercise to receive the health benefits. The problem with that approach is that most people aren't meeting those benefits yet or aren't meeting those requirements yet. The intention with that is to motivate them. Public health officials think, well, if I just tell people you need to get more exercise because it's good for you, they'll do it. We know now that that doesn't work, that these guidelines are not motivational. They don't change our behavior. And what our work adds to that is that not only is it not motivational, it also creates potentially a mindset that makes people worse off than they were without knowing about the guidelines. So again, it's tricky. I'm not saying that mindset is everything. Certainly exercise is good for us and helpful for us. It's one of the things we have the best data on. So I'm not saying, oh, exercise is all a placebo. What I am saying is that we need to be more mindful about how do we motivate people to exercise, but how do we help people to actually reap the benefits of the exercise they are already doing?
Gotta get mics back in. All right, I think it's my mic. All right, now we can continue. So there's a lot to uncover with what Dr. Crum pointed out, which we're going to dive into. So what should we do if it's just not lecturing people on the benefits of exercise, right? So I think we really need to understand the obstacles as Jessica was referring to. And, while there's many obstacles that people face in actually exercising, I think we can boil them down to three primary things. One is time and life demands. The second is motivation, psychological factors. And the third are health and chronic conditions. So all these things, then they can overlap and people can have multiple things going on at once, can lead people to feel like exercise is not for them. And especially when we continue just to lecture people on exercise, it makes them feel like exercise isn't even something for them. So we're gonna go over some things that are better strategies. So when you guys are talking to people or you're marketing your businesses or you're trying to improve adherence, you have more success with that. So I think the one big thing that a lot of us run into is the lack of time. That still tends to be the number one cited obstacle, even in the literature, of why people say they don't exercise more. And you can sit back and go, oh, that's ridiculous. Of course you have exercise, and what we hear all the time. If you have time to watch stream a show, you have time to exercise. And that's the wrong approach. Because what research tells us is it doesn't matter the actual time that people have. It matters how much perceived time they have. So what we have to do is actually problem solve with them if this is actually an obstacle they are expressing to us is preventing them from being successful. So that might mean reducing the length of sessions. Can you offer shorter sessions, maybe 30-minute sessions? Can you make sure that they feel successful with 2, maybe 3 strength training days a week instead of feeling like they got to do 5 or 6 days a week, right? A lot of times people come in, they don't think it's enough, right? But if we can educate them that, hey, if you can be consistent with twice a week, that's going to be far more meaningful than you being inconsistent with trying to make it 5 to 6 days a week, which I would get clients all the time that had really well-meaning intentions, but they just didn't know that there's no way they could adhere to a 5 to 6 day a week program, even that's what they came in and said they were willing to do, right? And so again, looking at other opportunities to gain exposure to people. Is it doing Zoom sessions, offering different times of classes, different opportunities for people to participate in exercise so that it feels more accessible, that they find the time into their lifestyles? And then we can work on different behavioral strategies. One of the things I've really dove into the last several years is behavioral sciences, because I realized it didn't matter, I could have the perfect exercise program, but if I couldn't get people to adhere to the program, it didn't really matter. So we can work with things like if-then planning. If-then means like you take something they normally do. If I do this, then I'll do that. So for example, if it's 6:30 a.m., I go to the gym to train. I know this sounds overly simple, but this stuff actually helps train people, and you can have conversations, especially in your interviewing process, about these types of strategies. If I miss a Monday, I train Tuesday at lunch. So it gives people flexibility within their program too, because it's good to have the idea of scheduling in your sessions, but where a lot of people start to have pitfalls is if they miss that scheduled session, they think I just failed, and then it starts to spiral that I can't do exercise because I don't have time, rather than just being more flexible and understanding if I miss that scheduled time, then I already know what my options are. So you can already plan with people. If you aren't able to make this session, then these options are available to you, gives them the confidence they can still find time. And then you can do things called habit stacking, where you take what people, again, are doing and stack on top of it. After I drop the kids off at school, I go for a walk, right? You don't even have to give a definitive time length for it, because that can be dictated by the flexibility of the day. It's just the action of going on that walk and building that habit becomes really important. After my morning coffee, I do 3 stretches, right? Keeping it very simple, very accessible to people is really key. So low motivation and energy is a big one, right? We hear that a lot. I just don't have the motivation. I don't have the energy to do it, which coincides with some of the time barriers. Probably one of the biggest things is looking for fresh start opportunities. So a lot of us roll our eyes when New Year's rolls around because everyone goes to the gym and makes their New Year's resolutions. But we should take into account why people do that. Because research shows that when people see opportunities for a fresh start, it actually is a big motivation to get them going. So a fresh start doesn't have to be just New Year's. It could be Monday. It could be the start of the week. It could be a birthday. It could be something where they feel like they're sort of starting anew. And that could be a really good motivator, a really good way to engage with people to get them motivated to sort of take action. But the biggest thing that I think that people need to wrap their heads around, which is going to be really difficult, I mean, it sounds too obvious, but I think a lot of people neglect it, is exercise has to be fun and easy. Not easy in the aspect of the actual exercise is easy, but it has to be accessible to people. If it's like, I got to do an hour drive and then I got to figure out, where to park, and then I go in this busy gym that's hard to navigate, people aren't going to do those things. And we're not going to do things either that are not enjoyable to ourselves. So we may have to look to expand what we think about movement training. A lot of us, and I know I fall into that, where we're like, well, this is what I do in training, but that's going to limit the number of people that find that appealing. You may want to expand different types of movement training systems that you can implement to, again, appeal to more people. It doesn't mean that you have to know everything about anything. It just means maybe you broaden your horizons about some other different types of training methods so you can implement those, so you can make training more enjoyable. What research has found really interesting too is that when you do this simple action, what's called temptation bundling, which means that you combine something that people really don't like with something that they like. In this example, they had people go to the gym to do a treadmill, and if they give them the option, the only time they could listen to their favorite audiobook that they sort of got them into was when they went to the gym to do their treadmill work. That increased participation by 51%. So if you're giving people things to do on the off days, how can we combine temptation bundling? How can we make something that they don't necessarily love to do with something they do enjoy doing, so they are more apt to do those things? So these are the kind of concepts we're going to be covering in more depth in our masterclass, but I want to give you guys some immediate ideas that you can utilize today. I think a big one too is health concerns and chronic conditions. So a lot of people are going to have chronic health, chronic pain. We already know that. Like a lot of people come in like I have my shoulder, my back, my knee, my hip. It could be a combination of things. They may have chronic diseases like cardiorespiratory, cardiovascular disease. They could have diabetes, other things going on. Especially as we get into this age group, this is going to be more prevalent. And a lot of these people have a fear of making their condition worse, or that you're not going to listen to their concerns around this. So one of the biggest things we need to do is acknowledge their apprehension and realize that it's something that we want to make sure that we're giving some voice to when we're actually talking to people, that we're just not sort of, oh yeah, I know you have a shoulder problem. No, yeah, well, don't worry, we'll work with it. No problem. No, we want to really acknowledge their fear behind it, because someone could be worried that, well, not only going to hurt my shoulder, but then I'm not going to be able to go to work. And then this is going to cause that. And then it sort of starts to spiral. So we can work with pain education. How are we going to, the precautions we're going to take? How does pain work? What are things they can do in their own life to help their pain sensations be better? We can do things that reduce their fear and threat. So that might be more gradual movement, So again, the nice thing I think is that giving coaches their freedom, you don't have to teach people any one particular exercise. You need to make people feel like they can do exercise. So wherever that entry point is for people that reduces that threat for a lot of these individuals is going to be the biggest win. So a lot of times I'll listen to what their biggest concerns are, and we start at a level that they can handle. A lot of these people are very sensitive to like soreness. So we're going to do things that I know aren't going to make them very sore. And we're going to adjust the programming so that we don't do too much volume or intensity that can induce that soreness, because the last thing I want to do is reaffirm that they can't do this successfully. So again, we talk about chronic health conditions. I think one of the most astounding statistics is about 78% of Americans from 35 to 64 are going to have at least one chronic health condition, and 50% are going to have multiple chronic health conditions. And I know you see that in a lot of your patients, right, Jess?
Yeah, I mean, those statistics are kind of staggering. What was that, age 35 and up? I mean, we're talking about, high blood pressure, diabetes, things like that you sometimes overlook that impact training. Very, very common.
As well as the medications they could be taking to combat these, and how it impacts fatigue and recovery and their ability to sleep, or their appetite. All these things are really important to begin greater awareness of when you're working, especially with this type of population. So a lack of social support is another big one. I'd find that you'd have someone come in and they're like, I really want to make changes in my life, but my family's not really on board. My significant other is not really supportive. And that can be really overwhelming for people, because that's their social circle and that's their social network they spend the most time with, and they're not getting that social support. So we have to ask ourselves, what type of support can we give? Does it mean creating an environment in our gym that reinforces that support, whether it's an online group support where people that are part of the gym that are going through similar challenges can give their problem-solving strategies? Maybe they can give out their favorite recipes, or you could put out a question: how do you tackle being overwhelmed with all the responsibilities in life and make it to the gym? Can you get engagement that way? Because a lot of times when people also start giving advice, they actually start listening to their own advice better. So again, you're giving a voice to, again, not only people in your gym to be more supportive, but they start to listen to their own advice and be more productive as well. Is it bringing a friend to the gym? A lot of times people find just simply the activity of going to the gym with somebody a great way to build adherence to their program. And then finding out ways, how can they possibly build social support at home? Because that's an environment they're going to spend a lot of time with, that we want to reinforce these ideas. And how are we reinforcing social support ourselves? We want to be more of guides than we do want to be dictators, right? How can I help you do this with you, right? Instead of this is what you're going to do, becomes a very important shift in how we make people more successful. So long-term adherence, right? Because I don't think people realize about 50% of people drop out within the first 6 months. So that 6-month period is really critical. Can we get people to that 6-month timeline? So what are some of the challenges that we have? So when people are tired, stressed, overwhelmed, usually they'll fall into a present bias, which means that their immediate needs sort of trump any of the long-term goals they have. So they may know that, I shouldn't go out to drink with my friends, but I'm so stressed out from work, I just want to socialize with people I enjoy, that I end up having more drinks than I should, because the immediate becomes more important than the long-term goal. right? The procrastination, right? A lot of times people are like, well, I know they gave me that mobility program to do, and I'll get to it, but I just have too many other things going on. How do we overcome that? What are solutions we can provide people? Forgetfulness. I know that sounds silly, but a lot of people are just busy in their lives. And while we're the ones that love and will make our lives revolve around fitness, that's not everybody. And people just forget with the business of their lives. So we need to make things easy, almost like a default into their lifestyles. So we need to think of ways that we can make things almost default so they make the easy choice instead of having to make these huge leaps and remembering and motivating themselves to do every action that they need. Overconfidence was a big one that I would see with clients all the time, right? Clients come in for their initial interview, and I get it. Like they feel like they can do all these things. They want the strictest diet, they want the hardest training program, but then they find that's not really what they want, right? Temptation, giving in short-term pleasures, laziness, and friction, right? Hey, people aren't lazy necessarily in all aspects of their life. Again, we're the ones that love fitness. People may be really motivated in their businesses. They may be really motivated in their personal lives. And fitness might be just a harder thing to, again, motivate people to. So again, we need to find out how to make it fun and easily accessible for a lot of people. I remember one example was when my first facility, a lot of my clients would be coming from work during around lunchtime, and they'd be going back to work after. And I didn't have showers. And that was a big obstacle for a lot of people because they didn't want to get all sweaty and then go back to work all sweaty and smelly. So if they had to go back home, that was another obstacle for a lot of people. So I eventually moved to a place that had a shower, and that made a big difference. So again, just being more aware of these things and just low confidence. Like we get all this time, people come in like they want to make changes, they just don't believe they can actually achieve them. And we have to figure out how to instill that confidence in them. So again, factors that influence those behaviors. Readiness. So just because someone's come into your facility doesn't mean they're ready to the level that you might be ready. They're not ready to do, all the things that you want them to do, even though they gave you a goal that they want to achieve. They want to achieve that goal, but they don't really know what it takes to actually achieve it, right? So we want to make sure that we're getting on the same page, that we really acknowledge what they're saying. So, for example, what made you come in right now to focus on fitness or your health? And they go, well, I'm starting to feel stiff and tired all the time. What we want to do is we want to reflect on that goal because we're trying to build meaning towards that goal. Your body's giving you signals that wants more care. So it's not manipulation. It's just having them hear that I am listening to what they're telling me. And then follow up, what would make you feeling better physically allow you to do more in your life? So we're building that why and that value to them through this process. We delve deeper into this in the masterclass, but I want to give you guys some example because a lot of times people come in and they're like, I just want to feel better. And they come in with these really vague goals and they don't know how to go about doing them or what the expectations are. And that's where they start to falter because we start lecturing to them what they need to do rather than them helping develop their own plan that they can see themselves achieving. And then when people are worried about injury, right? Someone says, I'm worried about that. I might get hurt. Maybe I'll hurt my back, my shoulder, my knee. So again, acknowledging this. I know you're worried about your health, but you also don't want to risk making your knee back worse, right? So what would help you feel safer in getting started? So they're having autonomy in that session, right? They're making decisions about their own well-being, which I know that's probably a complaint in a lot of patients with doctors, like they're being lectured to, they're not giving autonomy, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So again, just giving awareness that we are listening and respecting some of the concerns they have can really give empowerment and motivation to people in the program instead of lecturing to them, you need to do this and that, and this, right? So what really is missing, again, what we really don't understand is the idea of like self-discipline and willpower, right? We hear that all the time in the fitness industry. You just need to want it more. You just need to work harder at it. And that sounds great in all this, toughness, but it actually fails in most programs. So if you've heard me speak before, which I'm sorry if you guys have, you probably heard me bring up this gentleman, Dr. Justin Brewer. He's both a psychiatrist and a neuroscientist. And I think he really explains well why willpower doesn't work. And all the research behind in the behavioral sciences around willpower shows it's actually not that effective. So I'm going to turn over to Dr. Brewer for a second here.
What about willpower? Where does willpower come into things?
Well, willpower is interesting because it's been debated for thousands of years. Like there's a relief on the Parthenon from ancient Greece showing this rider and a horse. And the depiction is that the horses are passions, right? Our emotions, and the rider is reason. Well, which one's stronger? So this has been a debate forever. And from a modern neuroscience perspective, what we're finding out pretty clearly is that willpower is more myth than muscle. And so what develops a habit is how rewarding something is. Like we talked about it, if ice cream tastes good, we're going to learn to eat it again. And that same mechanism is what drives behavior change. First we can ask, does willpower work? And if it did, my job as a psychiatrist would be so much easier because I could just tell my patients to stop doing this or that. And it'd be one visit and I'd be done. You don't need to see me anymore.
Yeah.
If willpower worked, we wouldn't need to be having this conversation. The problem is that it really doesn't have a neuroscientific basis. It makes sense from a logical standpoint that we'd hope that we could think our way out of things, but we really can't think our way out of a paper bag.
Get the mic back in. Am I good to go? Yeah. No, I'm the problem. Yeah. I can't find the button. There we go. Sorry, guys. So what Dr. Brewer means when he says we can't think our ways out of a paper bag is this, that most of the research shows when we have stress, fatigue, all these type of different situations, our ability to exude willpower, self-control just basically fails on us greatly. So what research shows is what successful people do well is they don't rely on willpower. They set up environments and situations and plans that make it easy to default to the better choice in things. So instead of telling people they just need to work harder or have more willpower and self-discipline, we need to figure out how to change the environment in order to make sure that those choices are the easy things for people to default to. So the science of motivation isn't really a rah-rah cheerleading thing. It's really about understanding what drives motivation, things like enjoyment and fun. How are we going to make this more enjoyable? How are we going to make this more fun for people? Is it a certain type of exercise that they like? Is it an environment they like? Is it playing their favorite music list that they like? All those things are really important. Sense of competency and mastery. So a lot of times people don't realize the progress they're making. And sometimes the progress can be as simple as, you've been consistently coming in twice a week for the last 8 weeks, because maybe that person came in and said, I'm not the type of person that goes to the gym. Well, that's a big change. That's not a change in body fat. That's not a change in their lives, but it's a change in their identity that can build that habit for the long term, as well as making sure you're, helping people understand their wins in training too. Personal achievement and goal setting, right? So instead of telling people, hey, you need to do 10,000 steps a day, tell people, can you make sure you go for a walk 3 times a week? That's going to lead them to more success because it's going to give them more flexibility. Because if they're only taking 1,500 steps a day and they do 3,000 steps in a day, well, that's way better than 1,500, but it's way less than 10,000. Even though they doubled their activity level, they feel so much worse about it because they didn't achieve that goal. So being aware of that helps us set up better goals for people too. And giving people that choice control into the program becomes very powerful for motivation as well. So I think another narrative is that over 40 means if you exercise, you will not age, right? It's the anti-aging mantra. And I hate to break it to you. This is a spoiler alert. We all age. I don't know if you guys all know that. So I rather look at it as healthy aging rather than anti-aging. Because when we start to compare ourselves, whether it's to other people, like right now, nowadays, I mean, you see it probably even more because I think women tend to be more prone to a lot of the marketing online. If you don't look a certain way as a woman at this stage in your life, you're failing. That can automatically make people feel worse about themselves. But also not even self-comparison to other people, but self-comparison to who you were maybe at a period of time in your life. If you compare yourself, hey, I looked my best when I was 15. I mean, it's kind of weird being in your 40s and comparing yourself to a teenager, but your life is totally different. Your responsibilities are totally different. Your goals are totally different. Your physiology is kind of different. So, but that can make people feel bad too. So we don't want to work on self-comparison, whether it's comparing ourselves really to other people or to who we were in the past. We want to set up for goals of who we want to be in the future based upon what's important to us right now. Because the reality is, as we age, the elasticity of our connective tissue changes. So that's going to change our flexibility and mobility a little bit. We see neuromuscular changes. We see loss of type 2 muscle fibers, which explains why people are more prone to falls as we age because they don't have those power fibers as much. And you know what? We know that if you are physically active throughout your life, you can prolong these changes, but they're still going to happen to some degree. And to me, the most exciting part is that even if you take someone who's never been physically active before and they become physically active, they can healthy age better along with someone who doesn't become physically active. So again, it's never too late to, again, get on that fitness journey. Now, I think what's really important to understand is how we perceive age is a big deal too, because when people come in and they're worried about their age, I'm too old for this, I can't do this, then it really hampers people versus thinking that, hey, I'm starting now and this is a good place to start and I can do this. It actually shifts our physiology. So I'm going to share a little clip from one of my favorite people is Dr. Ellen Langer. She's a Harvard professor for over 40 years. She's considered the mother of mindfulness. She's going to quickly talk about her landmark study called the counterclockwise study. It was such a famous study. It was almost made into a movie with Jennifer Aniston, which gives us credibility, right? If Jen's going to do it. So I want her to explain, but again, how this perception, if we think we're old, actually makes us older than if we just realize we're on a journey to make ourselves better.
Idea was if we can take the mind and put the mind in a younger place, and take our measurements from our bodies, will we get any effect? So what we did was we retrofitted a retreat to 20 years earlier, and we had elderly men live there as if they were the younger souls. Now it's interesting because they were around 80. But that was not when 80 is now the new 60. Yes, they were really old. So basically, we have old men living in this place, not Hollywood, because I couldn't afford it. Okay. But as well as we could make it seem as if it was 20 years earlier.
Got it. So they're like living in a building where it looks like, oh, wow, I've gone back in time.
Yeah. And so they would be speaking about the Cuban Missile Crisis and other events of the past as if it was just happening. All right. And so, and they'd be watching television shows and movies from the past as if, they had just been produced. All right. So as well as we could, we took them back in time. In a period less than a week, what we found was their vision improved, their hearing improved, their memory, their strength, and they look noticeably younger. What? All without any medical intervention. Our thoughts are preventing all sorts of very positive behaviors.
Way back. All right, so I think what's key to understand with that, I'm going to fix Jessica's mic. Whoop. This one more time. Listen, it's the idea of, again, can you think of, if you have a population, especially, let's say, over 60, are they better off working with other 60-year-olds? Will that inspire them? Will that motivate them? Maybe then if they're thrown into your group of 20 and 30-somethings, are the ways that you can build that confidence around their age. Age is not a detriment, but it's also a realistic number. That we're not saying just because you are this age that you can do anything, but we can put you in an environment that really feeds into that more positive mindset. Because basically our mindset shapes our physiology. If we don't think we can do something, we're going to be less likely to be able to do it. And again, the nice thing is that we can start to see ourselves in different ways. So again, look at how that environment is. Are you playing super intense music, like hard rock, when you're working with people that don't like that music? Do you have a atmosphere that feeds into the population you're working with, or do you have just an environment that you just personally like? Looking for those opportunities to, again, relate to people better actually leads to greater success.
Now, remember, anti-aging, that market is a huge moneymaker. You are constantly being sold to, not only in the health and fitness industry, but the beauty industry as well. And if you're looking at that, children as young as 10 are reportedly asking their parents for anti-aging products. And this is true. I see it with my girlfriend's teenage daughters. They have more skincare products than I do. And it's really sad because that anti-aging, that name anti-aging in and of itself, like Josh had said, is really detrimental instead of healthy aging and things like that. I mean, these kids have already gone through where they're thinking about their bodies and they want to lose weight. Now they're thinking about anti-aging products. This is just, it's a lot because of social media as well.
Yeah, but I understand it's about money to help you, that you don't have to fall into the trap of the messaging, right? Because nowadays what I see is that either people are afraid, like, you're a piece of glass, which is not true, or you have to be extreme. Like if you're not ripped at 55, you're doing something wrong. And I think either message of extremes can be very detrimental, because just realize it's a marketing opportunity for a lot of companies. So again, I think what Dr. Crum talked about early on when we talked about just telling people exercise doesn't work, she mentioned about being a placebo. This again is probably the best example. And she talked about we need to acknowledge that what we are doing for physical activity is a good thing. So again, I'm going to play the other, I think, landmark study. I've played this study so many times, I still don't think people get the power of it. It's probably one of the most influential studies in fitness that we could have. And people just don't understand why it's so powerful. But I think I'll do a better job explaining it this time.
So here we take housekeepers who First thing we did was ask them, how much exercise do you get? Now, these are women cleaning hotel and motel rooms all day long. Oddly, they say they're not getting any exercise. And that's because they think exercise is what you do after work. And after work, they're just too tired. Okay, so now we take these women, divide them into two groups. One group, we're going to teach them that their work is exercise. They're told, working at the gym on this machine is like making the bed is like working on the machine. We teach them that everything they're doing is in fact exercise. A very simple studies. We have two groups. One group that now knows their work is exercise, the other group that doesn't realize their work is exercise. We take hosts of measures before we start and at the end. The two groups are not eating any differently. One group isn't working any harder. They're basically the same, except one group believes their work is exercise. As a result of that change in mind, they lost weight. There was a change in waist to hip ratio, body mass index, and their blood pressure came down. Why do you think that happens? I believe that our minds and bodies are one. And if our mind is set to see what we're doing as something good for us, it'll generally be good for us.
See if Mike's working again. All right. Oh, I think yours is not working. Gotta make sure Jessica can be heard. So why is this so really impactful? Very simply, because most of fitness is about telling you what you're doing is not good enough, right? And nowadays, we're even seeing that walking is not even considered exercise anymore, right, Jess?
That one really gets me. I keep seeing this plastered all over social media, people stating walking is not exercise. Walking is one of the most accessible forms of exercise. And if people hear, you know what, walking is not exercise, and it's part of the only exercise program that they're doing, it's going to really cause them to go, okay, well, if that's not good enough, then I just might as well not do anything at all. Or it's not enough, so why even bother? It can be really detrimental. And I think as an industry in whole, we have to be really careful of putting down other forms of exercise, even if we personally don't do it. I see people bashing yoga or Pilates or, like I said, walking. We have to be really careful because it'll stop people from even doing that or even showing up at your door if that's something they see you say isn't good enough.
Or even potentially reaping some of the benefits that those physical forms of physical activity do. So again, it's very important to understand that if we view what we're doing as good, even though there might be more we can do, if we're focused on what we're doing is really good, we're going to get more benefit from it than if we see it as just not enough. So because people are getting burned out by all the messaging that social media is giving them.
Okay, we're seeing this wellness overwhelm seep in everywhere. People are ditching wearables because they feel over-optimized. Longevity culture is starting to feel like it's taking away from our actual life. And fitness influencer fatigue is at an all-time high.
Yeah, we've got these mic connections. Yeah. And we're back. So, I mean, the importance of that is people are getting burned out because now the laundry list of things to do to be healthy is so overwhelming to people. Like, why bother? I can't do the 5 million things that I'm seeing online that I need to do. So we need to change that messaging greatly. And so we want to spend the rest of the time giving you guys what you should be doing in your exercise programs, but also debunking some myths that are very common in the over 40 crowd as far as what is actually helpful in training. So I think everyone's heard about VO2 max. The VO2 max is the best predictor, better than things like blood pressure or cholesterol or BMI in actually seeing longevity and healthy aging, which is true. But I also think we have to be careful about the correlation causation that's going on here. Generally, if you have a higher VO2 max, you're probably someone that engages with physical activity more often, which also means you're probably someone who eats better, has a healthier lifestyle as well. So while VO2 max is a decent measure, I think we're becoming obsessive about chasing it rather than understanding the qualities that make it up. Because things like your genetics matter with VO2 max, your age, your training status, and even your body composition. So again, of course, people who are leaner and more fit are generally going to have better VO2 max. So it's hard to say, is it VO2 max or is it the lifestyle behind it that gives people that type of longevity improvement and decrease in mortality? So is the answer just to do any exercise? Is that what Jessica and I are saying? At some level, yes, because it depends on if you enjoy the exercise. But I want to talk specifically about if we're going to be most time efficient with people, really is about high intensity interval training. If we're talking about improving, VO2 max, if we're talking about improving blood work, if we're talking about improving all these different qualities, then HIIT probably is the best use of our time. And you may wonder, well, is it safe to use with people that do have different chronic conditions? Because we said that is an issue. But research has shown that, yes, it is safe, generally speaking, even with people with diabetes, obesity, and other issues, to use HIIT. Now, having said that, I would preemptively say if you do have a client with any type of chronic health condition, I would get approval from their doctor first before you have them actually engage in any type of HIIT training program. However, the research does show that it can be very, very potentially beneficial for them on a myriad of health markers if they can. Now, I see online is everyone's like, well, you can burn out doing HIIT so much. Number one, I don't think people train enough to burn out on doing HIIT. Number two, I think it's actually shown that people actually have really good adherence to their exercise programs when they are doing HIIT. So that's a kind of a cool thing too. We see exercise adherence be really strong when people do HIIT. So people actually do engage with HIIT programs very, very well. And if, again, you're talking about the fact that, well, some people are going, isn't it too hard for people? A lot of times people report that it's difficult to do HIIT, but they like the feeling afterwards, that sort of that empowerment feeling. They like to feel like they achieved something. However, you're going to have people that no matter what don't like doing HIIT. So you don't have to do HIIT with people. I'm just saying it's actually one of the most efficient ways to use our limited time that we have with people. So, I mean, the cortisol one's a big one, right, Jess?
Yeah, I didn't know this was a thing until recently. I mean, everyone's been talking about, being scared of raising their cortisol with exercise. I mean, I even have a group of girlfriends that say, you know what? I am not doing whatever training that you're doing because I don't want to raise my cortisol. You got to watch out. And I was like, wait, what?
Because it is true. When you do high intensity interval training or most types of exercise, you're going to raise cortisol levels. But that's not necessarily a bad thing because short spikes in cortisol aren't bad. They're actually good for us. They help mobilize energy. They suppress inflammation. It's kind of the take action hormone. If you don't want to spike your cortisol, don't get out of bed, right? Because that'll spike some cortisol. But even when we see in high intensity interval training, really cortisol only gets elevated for about 90 minutes. Where cortisol becomes a problem is when you have that consistent cortisol level elevated the entire day, whether you're stressed out, you're just constantly battling these things that make you worried and things like that, not these short bursts of exercise routines. So again, this is a common narrative that's being fed a lot to women specifically, that you can't raise your cortisol. That's why you're not losing weight. We have to do better education helping people understand it's actually not a problem. And just giving people more options, because if you do have people that can't do HIIT training, there's all sorts of training that can improve things like VO2 max, strength, and bone density. There's research that shows Tai Chi improves VO2 max. Now, I'm not telling you guys have to become a Tai Chi master, but you may want to open yourself up to learning some strategies that might be beneficial to people, because it's also really good for people with balance issues, chronic pain, and so forth. And this is actually, 5 years ago, I got really into Tai Chi for my own health issues. And this is my 72-year-old Tai Chi teacher. I mean, I always tell her I want to be like her when I grow up. I just think it's just about opening up our minds to that there's more options to teaching movement, getting people to exercise than we often think. And you may not enjoy Pilates, but Pilates can improve things like VO2 max, strength, body fat. Now, maybe not as effectively as HIIT, but if people enjoy it, then they're going to be more consistent. Then maybe it's something we want to employ in their training program if it's something they acknowledge that they like to do. So again, it's not you becoming a Pilates expert, but maybe there's some exercise you want to learn so that if your client says, I really enjoy Pilates, but I'm trying to get, I can't do everything, that you give that accessibility to people, meaning they're going to be more engaged with your exercise program. So common thing is, how about this, Jess? Grip strength.
Grip strength. So this is really misunderstood. And I've seen this, been floating around recently, the correlation, or this is more of a correlation causation fallacy that, improved grip strength improves longevity. And that's highly misunderstood. Most of the time when people have a strong grip or good grip strength, they're already taking part in good behaviors. They're active. They have a high physical level. So you're going to see a better grip strength. So I see people take this study and go, oh, I'm just going to work on my grip strength and therefore I'm going to live longer. That is not what it meant. And just working on your grip strength all day, every day is not going to increase how long you're going to live. Usually, and I think Josh had already said this, it's really just going to show that you already have a more active lifestyle.
Yeah. And when people give these standards that you need to do this, especially on loaded carries, I see people on farmers walks, There is no evidence, there is no research that shows if you're able to do a carry at this weight, that you're going to have greater longevity. It's just made up from a lot of anecdotal evidence, but the higher that people make it, like Jessica says, chances are you have to be fitter to do it. And so if you're more fit, well, you're probably going to have greater longevity. So it's not, again, the grip strength that matters, it's all the qualities that go behind it. And this is coming from a guy, I used to do strongman training. I used to do carries with 275 pounds each hand. I don't do that anymore. I don't consider my longevity hampered because I understand the qualities that give me better health and longevity. They're not necessarily related to just how much I can carry.
So this is another one. This is a Brazilian study. I keep seeing people, if you can go down in the seated position, stand back up, then you're going to live longer. That's not necessarily the case either. It's one of those fallacies. Again, if someone can do this, they're going to have better flexibility, mobility, balance, and even strength. So you're working with individuals that are already rather active and have those qualities. So just doing this in your living room for 10 reps every single night doesn't mean you're going to live longer.
So that's why a lot of our training goes back to just strong fundamentals of like, do you have these 7 foundational movement patterns represented in balance in your training program? And do you have methods of progressive overload that are more than just going heavier or lighter or faster or slower or more or less reps to adjust to people more seamlessly?
Now, bone density. This is another hot topic that everyone talks about. And I think it usually just people tend to think of just women and bone density decreasing as we age, but this happens with men as well. So you can see right around 35, things just go downhill. We start to see a decrease in bone density across men and women as well. So lots of studies, people share and they've been showing about plyos and jump training.
Like this one?
One of the most common questions I got in the 15
I don't think people
and up category was, what is the most efficient way for a woman older than 50 to train for the maximum health span and lifespan benefits?
I love this question because I get it all the time. We have to turn our brains away from everything that's been predicated before to this point. So if we're looking for longevity and we're looking at what we want to do when we're 80 or 90, we want to be independently living. We want to have good proprioception, balance. We want to have good bones and we want to be strong. So this is where we look at 10 minutes, 3 times a week, jump training. So this isn't your landing softly in our knees. This is like impact in the skeletal system.
So, take a mic back on.
Make sure we're good.
I don't think you're good. Gotta make sure Jessica's mic's good.
All right. The narrative about jumping, helping bone density isn't completely wrong, but it's not complete in that as well. So yes, jump training can help improve bone density, specifically more so in the femoral neck, which is really important because you see people in older populations have falls, they break their hips and so forth. So that can be really beneficial. Not so much in the spine, but you have to really take a look and remember who's not included in these studies. So individuals with current lower body injuries, those with severe acute joint pain, so that's moderate to severe, maybe osteoarthritis affecting the joints. Oftentimes people with joint replacements are left out of it. Individuals not cleared for high impact activity, so that would be people with significant osteoporosis and so forth. So you have to be really careful. I think a lot of people were sending me this and like, I should do this jump training protocol, right? And I'm like, well, you already have severe osteoporosis. I don't think jump training is where we need to start. We need to work on some other things before we even look at that. So you have to be really careful. If you just heard her say you need to do this protocol, but didn't realize who they left out of this study because they knew that these individuals could become injured, you have to really look at these studies being shared.
Because a woman who did a box jump and fractured her spine, right?
Yeah, I have patients all the time. She was in her 60s, did a box jump, got a thoracic spine fracture. So something that you wouldn't have thought would be, a huge impact, but she already had osteoporosis. It's someone I would not have doing jump training.
But the good news is that if you just do resistance training and some good aerobic exercise, you improve bone density. You don't have to do these crazy methods. I think that's what Jessica and I are trying to convey, is oftentimes the narratives in social media are making people feel like there's something they're missing that's a secret sauce to actually achieving these goals, where actually a really smart resistance and aerobic type training program is going to accomplish those goals for people. So again, I think what we do need to realize is that power declines faster than strength as we age, but that doesn't mean you don't go do box jumps. That power can look different for people, especially as we get older. I think, for example, a lot of people don't even see the potential that a lunge, for example, is a power exercise, especially for someone over 40. There's a lot of acceleration, deceleration, a lot of stability and mobility demands all at the same time. So power, while it's important, doesn't have to be these super crazy things I think people often see.
Now, this study was one I think that was a bit sensationalized over, socials. This came out in this actually came out a while ago, but for some reason it just kind of came back out into, the news and social media and things like that. The Liftmore study, you can see on the left the protocol, but I'll have Josh play this video.
Everything just comes to me.
These women are working out to beat brittle bones. Should I be back? Good, yeah, come down. It's a new way to prevent crippling osteoporosis. High intensity weight training instead of low impact.
When you are older and you have osteoporosis, those kinds of exercises were always thought to be dangerous.
But the 8-month study by Griffith University has found the opposite.
Since I don't fall.
These women, all over 60, have built up bone mass and recorded less falls.
I had no strength whatsoever.
Now Robin Anderson is deadlifting
between 50 and 55.
So,
hello.
Oops, sorry.
Excited to talk to you guys.
Sort these out. All right, so we have to look at who wasn't included in these studies again. And I had been sent this study numerous times from individuals, women 50 plus and older, saying, should I do this exact protocol? So let's
really heavy
yeah, it was heavy lifting, very few exercises. And then again, they added in some jump protocols for that too. But look who they excluded. Anyone with back pain. Majority of people that I see all have some sort of complaints of chronic back pain. A lot have back pain plus joint replacements, chronic diseases. All of those individuals were left out. And then looking at the control group, they only performed low intensity exercise. This wasn't compared to a placebo group. And what you have to question is that maybe a moderate intensity resistance program would have yielded the same results. Kind of like Josh said, just a well-rounded strength training program probably would have yielded the same results as well. And keep in again, that was an 8-month study. These people were already highly motivated and active individuals doing this study.
So, and again, I think the important balance is really important. I think people only think about it as older people, right?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for balance training starting off, even in your 20s and 30s, because people tend to start incorporating balance exercises. And I use air quotes because people think it's, just standing on one leg or doing circus tricks and things like that. People will start incorporating balance training after there's been an incident, after it's been evident that we have an issue with balance. Oh, someone just fell, broke a hip, we need to start incorporating balance. Or they're walking, unsteady, and now we need to get a cane or a walker or something like this. Balance training is really important and needs to be in every single program, especially with this population. And it's really going to focus on strength and motor control, sensory integration, proprioception, joint awareness, gait, dynamic stability. It encompasses so much, and it can look very, very different than what you think traditional balance exercises would look like. And I think people would be surprised that strength training isn't the number one thing that improves balance. I mean, obviously there is some carryover to balance with strength training, but a specific balance training program is going to add that you could add into your strengthening program is going to help improve that. And like Josh has said before, you don't have to become a Tai Chi practitioner, but it has significant improvement with balance because it's joint friendly. It can be done anywhere. It's very accessible to any population. And there's significant improvement with balance, mobility, and strength with that as well. So something combining all three of these would be phenomenal.
Yeah, I was at Harvard Symposium a few years ago where there's tons of research going in simplified Tai Chi programs for older populations seeing amazing results. It's something we're falling behind on in what the science is actually doing. So again, as Jessica said, balance doesn't have to be one thing. It isn't one thing. So yeah, there's elements of staying on one leg, but as Shannon's showing here, using cross patterns, diagonal patterns with staying on one leg, like not just staying on one leg, but what you're doing and the intent is important. But there's power. There's other aspects that we can teach people in balance. Balance isn't just one thing. It can work along with power and often does. There's simple ways to implement balance, especially for people that have poor balance in order to make themselves be successful, because that's what we want. We don't want people just falling around and struggling the entire time. So really what we want you guys to understand is, like, as we're nearing the end here, is like Goals like most people over 40, yes, they want to look better, but they have goals beyond just looking better. And honestly, the more I've worked with people over the past 30 years, while they come in with a goal of wanting to lose weight and things like that, the other goals end up becoming more important, having more energy, feeling better, moving better, and so forth. So how we actually orchestrate that within a program, how we communicate that, and the mindset we build behind it becomes really important. I think we have to start off with like listening way better, especially in that interview process, to really see what the obstacles that our clients have and be flexible as they go through the process. Because people initially will agree to things that they don't know that they can do or not, just because they think that's what they're supposed to do. And then when they're unable to adhere to those things, they think they're failing the program rather than us helping them understand that the program is flexible and it's supposed to be adjustable to their lifestyle. And I think just not enough coaches are getting trained in behavioral science, mindset, because that impacts whether or not people are willing to do the program in the first place. Again, I could have the best program in the world, but people aren't consistent with it. It doesn't really matter. So we have to understand how mindset plays a bigger role. And again, I understand too that training programs for people over 50 is more than just training individual muscles, individual systems, and so forth. So again, we wanted to give you guys a good layout because in our 6-week program, we are going to go in depth in all these concepts. I have quite the weeks mapped out for everyone, but we also want to give you guys some practical information to dispel a lot of myths today. So again, as Jessica said, we have a special 72-hour discount on our masterclass. You can use the code at the top there. We have these wonderful resources as well. And if you have any questions, you're more than free to reach out, email us with any questions that you may have. And what we're going to do is spend a couple of minutes, if there are any questions, answering them, because I'm sure some people have questions about things that we've said. So I'm going to turn off the share here, or I'm going to skip out of here. I'll pull up the, oops. Where did I put it? Here we go. My biggest question is how to address the potential overtrain to younger fitness enthusiasts of the possible adverse effects that won't surface until later in their lives. I think it goes back to first just understanding if you're lecturing people, it doesn't work. So if you're just telling you shouldn't do that because you're going to feel bad later, that sounds too far away. I'd rather address why do they feel the need to do that now? What are they trying to make up for? Why do they feel compelled to do these extremes? What is it that they're actually trying to achieve? And then, because if I can find what's actually important to them, maybe giving them the avenue of what's more effective will work better than telling them to stop doing what they're doing. Because chances are they're seeing everywhere in social media, you need to train like this, and you're the weird person that's telling them not to do it. So I'd rather find out what's their motivation to train the way they are now, what are they trying to accomplish, and kind of give them a more effective way of going about it. I don't know if you agree.
That was really good.
Okay. Almost like I know what I'm talking about. What about those dealing with osteoporosis or osteopenia? Well, I know that the weight-bearing exercise help to build bone density. What would be considered too much? I know everyone jumps.
Yeah, I mean, that obviously it's going to be unique to every single individual, and you can still train when you have osteoporosis or osteopenia. Obviously, there's varying degrees of those two things. So it's really going to be dependent upon their fitness level, obviously the age, the disease process that they're experiencing, but you still need to work on strength, mobility, flexibility, power, but you might just have to kind of dial it back. I think people get, they see some of those studies that we posted, like the jumps, the plyos, and all of that. That's not something I would approach with someone with active osteoporosis or osteopenia. Do I think, working on their bone density is going to be key, but I can do it in so many other ways than having to do, 2 specific exercises.
Yeah, I want to know, do they come in being fearful of this diagnosis that sounds scary to them, right? It's kind of like the osteoarthritis diagnosis, Jessica can talk about it. There's a lot of different levels to osteoarthritis. It's not one diagnosis, but people become very scared when they hear these terms. So if they're coming very fearful in, well, I'm going to put them in positions to succeed. I'm going to use loading positions where they can balance and feel steady upon. I'm going to give them opportunities to get more feedback from the tools that we're using. I'm going to use methods that aren't intimidating to them. I'm going to find out what they enjoy doing. All those things are going to be really important. Again, not overwhelming them in that process, not forcing them into things that they find are scary or intimidating at first until we earn that trust and confidence with them.
And I don't want people to think, because sometimes they're like, oh, people aren't fragile. No, people aren't fragile. But I can tell you from personal experience, I have had 6 friends in my friend group significantly injure themselves from exercise programs, from doing too much. So This age group, yes, you can be set up for injury more so than, in your 20s and 30s. So you do have to be careful. You have to be progressive in nature. And I'm talking about significant injuries of women in their 40s, and they're calling me up and they're going, what did I do?
The burpee fracture.
Yeah, we've had burpee fractures, we've had disc issues from ab workouts,
Labrums.
torn labrums. I've had someone perform a Superman through their back. You name it. I mean, I'm seeing it all right now. So yes, we're not fragile, but we do have to be careful with the programming.
Yeah, aging gracefully is a wonderful way of
It is
putting
a perfect way.
I'd rather say that than anti-aging for
Yeah.
sure. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Now you're getting silly cortisol, hand grip, rise from the floor. Yeah, I mean, all these things are things that people hear. And these are things that, because nowadays, if someone has a big following, people think is a truth. So we do have to do good education. I think it's really good too for trainers to hear this, because these are things that your clients may be hearing but not addressing with you. So it's opportunities to, send out newsletters, do social media posts about, to engage with your clients at little mini seminars and teach them these things and teach them what the realities are and what is actually important for them to be successful, because they're getting all these mixed messages in from the information they're taking online. Regarding to HIIT, is there any info whether the time or heart rate based training is better? I don't think so. I don't think there's a comparison upon whether it's time or heart rate based training. You just want to see what the intensity level that people can work out at is. A lot of times with people that are not very good at exercise, meaning like lifting, particularly, like HIIT might be better for like the end of their workout, that 5-10 minutes where they can work really hard on something simple like an airdyne bike. Maybe it's bow ropes, maybe it's a sled, something that doesn't take a lot of technique. So HIIT for a lot of people that are in that age group might be better suited for a very specific period of the workout, while you build movement competency to the main part of the workout. Just
sorry. To readjust. 2 questions about lunges. Front lunge versus rear lunge. What do you tell clients who complain about lunges or just half squats in their front? So the question about front lunge versus rear lunge, the rear lunge is going to be easier for people because you have less of your body to decelerate and your center of mass stays over. Forward lunges are going to be more challenging. Obviously, if you pattern it over time, people always say, one's easy.
If I've done 5 million forward lunges, I've never done a rear lunge. The forward lunge is going to feel easier.
If you're working with individuals that don't really lunge, the rear lunge is going to be easier for them to do.
Which is also great for people that have a history of knee issues. It's less decelerative forces upon them. Doesn't require as much power for them. Lunges, a lot of times for people, they don't like doing them because they're hard. But actually, research has shown they're more effective as far as engaging more muscles, especially in glutes, because again, they're triplanar. You're working all 3 planes. You're having the lateral stability. You're having the sagittal plane. So again, it's a lot more effective. Actually, lunges are more time efficient. If I had to choose squats or lunges, I'm going to pick lunges. You get stability, you get acceleration and power, you get mobility. So I would educate people more and use some literature. There's tons of research to show that, single leg base drills or asymmetrical base drills like lunges can produce the same level of force, strength, but you get all these additional benefits as well. How do you address the recovery period for older adults? Well, this goes into lifestyle a bit. Because again, most people aren't training with me more than 2 to 3 times a week. So it's not from their training with me that becomes the issue, is especially in older populations or people that have chronic health conditions. You can speak to this, Jess. Their sleep becomes very erratic, especially if you get into like retirees who may develop weird sleep patterns because they're not as active and engaged as they may have been. It's, their nutrition, are they fueling their bodies? Are they not eating? That actually is very common too. I don't know if you want to address those 2 things.
Yeah, I think there's this misconception, older individuals, especially if they're living in larger bodies, that they're just eating too much. And I see firsthand that's not necessarily the case. Oftentimes they're under fueling and they're just not active. It's just, you have to really get a better understanding of how people live and their lifestyles and start making small incremental changes with those as well. Sleep patterns with older populations, usually I see the majority of my patients, they stay up late, they sleep in, they have, like Josh said, different sleep cycles. So really kind of diving into their lifestyle as well is going to be really helpful. And you can start making small little tweaks, and that's going to help with their recovery as well.
I also think, building more social support networks. That's why, classically for people over 60, I think it is, like there's programs like Silver Sneakers where you get a group of people together, because people over, in older populations tend to get even more isolated, and that really can impede their health and well-being, impedes their sleep, impedes their nutrition. So anything to engage them more into the community, maybe building a specific class of people in their similar age group where they get to play the music they like, they get to have the environment they're comfortable in and not feeling necessarily intimidated, can also help feed into some of those things. Building relationships, having things that are more targeted to them, I think also is important.
Are there continuing education credits for this course? Yes. So NASM and AFA have approved it for 10 contact hours. Again, it's not mandatory to come to the live sessions. Some people just like to stay on track and come every week. And some people just like the recordings and they check them out later on. It doesn't matter. Obviously, you can always apply to other organizations since we're already approved through these two particular organizations.
So we mentioned Tai Chi implies, but did not discuss yoga. How beneficial is yoga for older individuals? It can be great. Again, there's many different forms of yoga, just like there's different forms of Tai Chi and whatever. But as long as people are safe doing it and they enjoy doing it, it can be highly beneficial from balance, some strength. It does build some bone density as well because it is a weight-bearing exercise. There's more aggressive forms of yoga and there's more slower types of yoga. So again, it can be very beneficial. Again, another benefit to a lot of these different practices is they're typically done in groups, which feeds into the social support side of things, which is another added benefit to them. There's that nervous system regulation part, which can carry over into their everyday lives. So if they enjoy it, I'm all for it. And I think people, coaches, as we're becoming in a more competitive environment, like there's things now that I never had to compete for before, which is like, apps, social media workouts. There's all these other platforms, AI, that coaches have to build more value in their services. So I think we need to expand the type of training that we know so that we can appeal to more people. Again, doesn't mean you have to be an expert in all these things, but you may want to learn a little bit about them so you can implement them because they're going to speak to certain individuals more than other forms of training. There's so much out there on social media. Heck yeah, there is. Regarding women over 40 in perimenopause or approaching menopause, this sounds like a Jessica question coming up. And the health and hormone implications of that. Is there anything you could add exercise related to that?
Not sure of the exact question.
I think it's like how hormonal changes impact your ability to exercise.
Yeah, obviously you're still going to have to gauge if someone's feeling really fatigued or really sore. You're going to have to modify those. If someone walks in and says, you know what, I'm just really tired, I didn't sleep at all last night. Obviously they're going through a lot of changes. You're going to have to modify. That's why having a bigger toolbox of different modalities and things like that, like Josh said, is going to be really beneficial. I do think it's still something that needs to be prioritized, is making sure that consistency stays with this group as well. And I think strength training is one of the biggest things I would prioritize, obviously in a manner that we're not, flaring up people if they have a lot of joint pain or anything like that. But it's just going to be based upon how they feel that day. And that goes with anybody, right? Anyone not, even if you're not going through perimenopause or menopause, I think it's important to really kind of check in with that individual when they show up. Did they sleep? Do they have high stress levels? Are they really sore today? It just being able to
just be more flexible in your program and how you can adjust to how people are coming in. Because one of the things, to me, a program is just a guide. It's not written in stone. So I know how to adjust my programming depending upon how someone's coming in. If they are just, like I said, Jessica said, like they just slept horribly last night for one reason or another. Now they're fatigued. I'll be like, hey, let's start with something slow and see if once we get moving, they start to feel better. If not, we can keep the whole program kind of lower intensity and match what their energy levels allow for. But if they start to feel better as they start to move, then maybe we can start building into other things. I think and Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of women are getting fed this is some type of disease process rather than just a natural change that happens. So one of the interesting things that literature has really shown is how you perceive these stages in life really impacts their severity to you. Yeah, these things are definitely real, these changes that happen to people. But if you think it's this horrible, horrible thing happening to you, it's probably going to be a worse experience and people are going to find it harder to get through rather than seeing it as a natural process in life and being more flexible to change things to when they need to change them and adjust them without feeling guilty in doing so, which is hard, which is important. Don't feel guilty to change things because you feel like you need to change them that day, because it's the consistency that's more important than what you do in that particular day. Do you do movement screening or administer some other types of assessments with the population? Depends, right? Certain individuals, if pain is probably a big concern, I may do a certain series of screens with individuals, and I do a rather quick one, but it's going to impact my programming, but also it's important to communicate to them why I'm doing it and how it's valuable to them. I think a lot of times what happens if you have a client come in, someone does a movement screen, there's no communication of why it's important to that person's goals. So again, I think Jessica and I have a standing rule. Don't ever do movement screening if it's not going to change what you're going to do in the first place, number one. To me, I do a movement screen because it is going to impact the type of program I'm going to give someone. It might be things that I'm going to emphasize and things I'm going to avoid doing. And I'm going to communicate to them. And that does build value that, again, especially for that person that's worried about maybe that problematic knee, back, hip, shoulder, whatever it is, that I'm listening and I'm creating a program that's specific to them, that I'm not just throwing them into a program without acknowledging some of their concerns in the process. So if it's valuable to you, then I would absolutely do it. I can do it in 5 to 10 minutes, so it doesn't take a large amount of time. And I also emphasize communicating the value to the client as I'm going through the process. I don't go, oh, look, you have terrible shoulder mobility. I go, oh, okay, these are the type of exercise we're going to focus upon because we want to build up your shoulder mobility. How you convey that becomes really important. I found using bands kept leading to hand problems, but bands are pushed so much because they work. What can I do instead? I mean, Perform Better sells, I think, handles that attach to bands.
Yeah.
So if you don't like the bands actually going into the hands, you can get handles. That's an easy fix, I think. Cables work too. I don't know what you're using them for, but yeah, I can definitely work around a lot of these situations. But adding, like, clipping a handle to a series of super bands or whatever type of band you're using takes away a lot of that discomfort people feel with the band pressing into their hands. Is there a way to avoid injury when working with weights? And what is the best advice for you? You said your friends were injured. Is there something they could have avoided? I think, well, one was going to better coaching.
Yeah, a lot of it kind of, to give you kind of specifics. So one was kind of just a burpee challenge. Everyone was thrown into the mix, did a burpee challenge. No one was screened. No one was, it was kind of to fatigue. That was one of the issues as well. So that was a coaching or programming issue. Another one is doing, online, just kind of from YouTube workouts. And I'm guessing it was probably form, or she rushed into her training. So that can be avoided as well. Some were very specific exercises that I don't have people do, and I knew she was going to get injured doing them just from her health history. So again, it's one of those things where people kind of, for some reason think they need to do these exercises for this particular issue. And it's like, no, you don't have to do one singular exercise. So I think making sure you have progressive programs, really good coaching, checking people's form is really key. I don't want to scare people. Obviously, I didn't mean that to scare anyone. I just want people to know that it is important to have good programming and good coaching.
Yeah, I think the better way of looking at it is like, there's a narrative out there that there is no such thing as a bad exercise.
Yeah.
And to me, a bad exercise as a coach is something that has a lot of risk and a little reward.
Yes.
So I rather have average reward, low risk than high risk and high reward, because it only takes one bad rep. That person doesn't feel good. Now they don't want continued exercise. To me, I'm into this. I know that it takes a period of time, that people don't get fit in 4 weeks, that people don't get fit in 8 weeks. So I know I'm going to have to get them like to that 6-month mark. So if they're constantly getting injured, that's going to be a big deterrent from them to achieving that goal. So I think people just need to start slower. They need to start modestly. They just need to learn movement competency. And I feel like people feel this massive pressure to rush and to achieve these amazing goals in minimal amounts of time because that's what they're being fed. But a lot of they don't see the behind the scenes problems that a lot of these things cause. So I think the idea is like, there's nothing wrong with taking it slower, being a little bit more proactive and making sure that you're going at a pace and exercise that you feel comfortable with, and things that aren't high risk in mode. Because I hate to, again, another spoiler alert, research shows there's no one training program that works so much better than any other training program when it comes to losing weight, building strength, and so forth, right? There is no one magical program. Like Jessica said, there's no meaning to do a exercise that you find that's uncomfortable to you or you don't feel good doing just because everyone says it's good for you. You need to do what you enjoy, what feels good to your body, and what allows you to keep making progress. It was very informative. How do you program HIIT for your 40 plus clients, 30, 40, 20? How many exercises per round? How many rounds? Okay, so just so everyone's on the same page, in high intensity interval training, there's a work rate interval and there's a rest interval. Typically what you want to do is A 30-30 is a good starting point, depending what we're talking about doing. If I have a beginner who's over 40, I'm probably not doing this in their strength training portion as much in the initial phases because their movement competency, like they just don't know how to squat well, they don't know how to do a push well. We're going to do more repetitions with that. But if we want to go like 5-10 minutes, let's say on an airdyne or bell ropes or wherever it might be, I might start off with 30-30 because they can't go as intensely as someone who's experienced can go. Right? They don't know how to push themselves to that intensity. So that allows them to build up volume of work. So that's a really good starting point is that 30-30. Now, if you want to vary from that 30-30, I wouldn't go 40-20. So that's what's called a negative work to rest ratio. That means you're doing more work than resting. Because think about it this way. If I made you sprint around a track as hard as you physically could, but I gave you a minimum amount of time to rest, how hard could you sprint again? Probably not that hard. So the intensity part drops too much. I would probably do a opposite. I'd do a 20-40 interval, which means I'm going really, really hard for 20 seconds. And then I'm resting for 40 because I need more rest because I went more intensely. People usually get that backwards because if you go really, really hard, you need more time to recover, right? If you've ever done an airdyne, if you've gone all out for 5 seconds, you probably need like almost like a minute to recover. Okay, so once people are able to go more intensely, the work time goes down, the rest time goes up. I hope that helps a little bit. My scariest client injury was a 70-plus woman who was doing amazing. I started to bump up the intensity, and she had transient global amnesia episode. That is pretty crazy. I mean, again, we can't prevent everything. I think a good intake of your client's health history is important. If you're uncomfortable with something, getting a doctor's input or making sure they get clearance from their doctor is really important. I mean, Jessica just brought to my mind, not that we should be expected to do so, that trainers don't take people's blood pressure before they start exercising. And that's something she does with her patients all the time because it can fluctuate so much. And so oftentimes we don't even really know what's happening with our client before they start exercising. It's not to scare you, it's just to make you more aware that we need to do a good intake of our client before we make them do a lot of the training that we do so we understand everything that they're dealing with. Would this or any of your programs be appropriate for programming for a small 6 to 8 people, fitness studio for clients 40 plus, mainly just using dumbbells, barbells, and supermans? Yeah, absolutely. We're teaching principles and concepts. I think a lot of the stuff that we're going to go over, pain, we're going to go over, balance training, we're going over mindset. These are very applicable to, small group type of atmospheres for sure. And we want to make this very easy to, insert, not overwhelm people as well.
Yeah, so we're going to place, this question was, do you have the masterclass up on our website? So we're going to place the banners up there, but we actually have a box in the shop that says masterclasses. So it'll be the first masterclass that'll pop up under the category masterclass. And again, I'm going to change out all the banners shortly, so it'll be easy to find as well.
Good to that.
We have a whole...
Jeez, oh man, it's hard to find good help nowadays.
Also, what are your favorite HIIT exercises to use with most 40 plus clients?
Depends how trained they are.
Yeah.
Like I said, if it's beginners, we're going to default to more of the aerobic equipment stuff, right? Sleds, airdynes. I personally don't love rowers very much. Don't hate me, Chris. But I like ski ergs work well, just because a lot of times rowers bother people's backs. But the airdynes are awesome. The ski ergs can work. Bow ropes are awesome. Sleds I find are incredibly useful. Things like that because they're low technique. And people can really work on them very safely and effectively. Those are the type of tools I generally like using. If you have people that are more trained, you can do lots of different things. That's where you can get into the strength training, having a HIIT component. If they move well and they built up some of that capacity, you can use, if you followed us, like we use stuff with kettlebells, ultimate sandbags, medicine balls, are all great ways to implement HIIT if you're trained up and you have the movement competency to do those things well. For a client with osteopenia, how would she start doing HIIT training? I might have missed this answer. Oh, that's okay. So for someone who has, osteopenia, I would probably default to a lot of those aerobic-based training methods that we were just talking about.
I think she asked.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That includes power jumps.
I probably wouldn't. I don't know. I default to the physical therapist here.
Yeah, I'm not going to jump right into...
Was that playing words?
Literally go into a power jump. I think people underestimate, jump roping. I think people underestimate.
Well, I think people don't know that in research, power training is also just learning to accelerate. So if you have someone go down slow in a squat and then accelerate themselves back up, that's power for people. Yes. If you had them learn how to slowly, if you did a reverse slide lunge and learn how to control coming down, and then come up with acceleration, that's power training. And one of the great things about bands is bands force you to accelerate. Like if you're pushing or pulling, that's power training for people. It doesn't, I think the point was it doesn't have to be this big
Yeah,
thing
I
that
think
people
when
think about.
those studies came out, everyone thought they had to do some sort of jump training, and that wasn't the point. It was working on power. And there are many ways to do that depending upon the specifics of your client or your patient and kind of understanding where they're at. I probably would not be doing power jumps first thing with that age group.
Yeah. What about the airdyne doing a set goal of 10, 15 calories rather than time, then match the set rest to work portion? Yeah, you can do that. I mean,
and that
again,
motivates people sometimes too, if they see the caloric burn, whatever gets them going to, get to that point.
what I would do is see how long it takes them to burn those calories and make sure the drop off isn't more than 20%. So if they burn 10 calories in, let's say, a minute, that the next session, it doesn't take them like a minute and a half to burn 10 calories, right? Because they're slowing down. So you just want to make sure the drop off in their intensity isn't too much, because they might go really hard and then they don't get enough rest time and then they can't match that. You want to keep close to matching that time length. So if it takes them a minute, you want to try to keep it about a minute that takes them to work that 10 calories, if that makes sense.
Is jump rope training safe for a hip replacement? So again, people hate this answer. It depends. I don't know the history. I don't know the age. I don't know the injuries. I don't know the type of hip replacement, but people with hip replacements do end up running again. So running is going to put more force through that hip than just jump roping. So
I would get, obviously, if you're worried about their doctor recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I have a neighbor that just got a total hip replacement. He's 40 years old. Yes, he can jump rope. If they're 80 and they have a significant history of osteoporosis, they're not really coordinated and all this stuff, then probably not.
I mean, I take all those variables into account and just see, like, what are you trying to accomplish with it? And, if there's any apprehension by you, then can I accomplish this goal in a different way that feels safer for the individual? Because again, you don't have to do jump rope, but I mean, it's just, I think it's a lower impact type of plyo for people. If they can't do jump rope, then they're probably definitely not ready for more intensive jump training. But there's lots of different things that you can do for power for people. If you feel like, you're worried about this, like we talked about, getting someone might be squatting to a box and then accelerating up again, right? Or it might be taking bands and split stands and just accelerating, pushing out, in a press. All these things are things that we can do with people if you feel like you're not confident that it's appropriate for them. I would never risk it. If my rule of thumb is, if I feel like it's an issue, I'm going to find another way to accomplish that goal in a safer manner.
Yeah.
All
great questions, guys.
So I'll stop sharing. Yeah, I really appreciate all the questions.
Yeah, and thanks for staying on the whole time. That's awesome.
Josh, yes, thank you guys so much. Everyone, thanks for hanging out with us this afternoon, and we will see you all back here shortly.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Take care.